Hello all, Alison here. Welcome back to Words and Pictures for a few minutes of fun. Another few minutes of rusty fun today. My usual January obsession, I don't know what it is, something to do with marking time passing and adding another layer of rusty decay to my life. Who knows? In any case, we've played with various ingredients. I've been playing around. These aren't set recipes. These aren't fixed things that you do. This is me continuing to explore with what I have, with the ingredients I have in my stash, and playing around with ways to do it. So one of my favourite things to do, and you'll have seen it on this channel before, is combining rust with crackle. And this is one of my all-time favourite combinations, is to have some rustiness alongside some crackle paste detail. And so what we'll have a go at today is just another way to do this. I have done each of these in slightly different ways with slightly different ingredients. It's always an ongoing investigation for me to see what it is and how I'm going to go about it. If you want to see some rusting of embellishments, we've had an episode like that. I've got a couple of pieces sort of already on the go, but I will also show you how I got as far as this one. This is just applying crackle paste to, this is actually an MDF board. This one is on plain card and I've mounted it on some waste cardboard. This is inspired by a candle holder I've got, which has got some sort of grey metal, which is now getting wonderful rusty patches on it. If I remember, I'll try to put a photo or a couple of photos of that into this video so that you can see the direct inspiration for that. So that's what we're going to have a play with today, is just introducing some little rusty areas into a main panel rather than a full-on rusting of an element. Follow the links. I'm trying to create a playlist of all this rustiness, so you'll be able to find it all in one place. So you'll find that down below. If I can remember whether we made any of these on camera or any useful crackly videos, I will also link those down below, so take a look in the description. I'm going to get my craft mat and show you just how I started off this panel to kick off, and then we'll have a play with some paint to create little rusty areas. I've zoomed in a little bit so that we can see a bit more closely what's going on. Not that huge detail is really necessary for this. This is the PaperArtsy Slate Fresco Finish Chalk Acrylic, and I'm just going to put a layer of that onto this piece of white card. This is PaperArtsy Smoothie card, but any white cardstock you've got, or indeed you don't have to start with white. Start with another color and then you'll have another layer of stuff going on underneath, but that's what I'm going with for now. I don't mind having some brush strokes in there, that's fine for texture, but one of the things I quite enjoy about what's going on here is, for this metal look, dead simple, and it was a bit of an afterthought at the time, I have to be honest, is that I just used up some of the paint that was left on the mat and spattered it directly onto this before it was quite dry, so that it has a chance to mix and meld just a little bit. And that for me just gave me a hint of metallic texture, iron metal as opposed to shiny metal. As you'll know, I'm not that much for the shiny stuff. That gives us a lovely mottle to our surface, which, yeah, dries matte, because these are matte chalk paints. If you want a glossy look to them, you can absolutely use some gloss glaze. You can mix the gloss glaze in before you apply the paint, or you can apply a coat of gloss afterwards. So that's the first stages of this. Going to wipe up, dry off. I'm already mucky, look at that. And yeah, then I'll just show you how I edged on some crackle paste and some grit paste, actually, thinking about it. I think there's grit and crackle going on in there. There we go, dry and ready to play. I've stuck it to a bit of cardboard packaging because that's going to help the crackle just not curl up the card as it dries. My craft mat is wiped. It's gradually getting dirtier. The silicone craft mats are great and they will wipe up beautifully, but gradually over time it's going to accumulate a bit of muck. I have got a new one to replace it. But yeah, a completely clean craft mat is either the sign of a new craft mat or an underused craft mat. So a little bit of muckiness is a sign that we're playing regularly. Just going to make sure this is fully glued down under here. So this is my usual Cosmic Shimmer acrylic glue. Any white glue will do. There we go. Card to card, paper to paper is really not a, shouldn't be a trial for any glue, though you'd be surprised. There are some that are, it's one of those things where I kind of think it's best not to buy the cheapest possible one you can find, because they tend to be less effective. So for this, I'm going to use a little bit of the Decoart texture sand paste. This could absolutely be distressed grit paste or any of the other grit pastes that Ranger produce. And I'm just going to create some rusty patches, both round the edges, textured patches ready for rustiness. And yeah, it's sort of looking for those places where metal gets mucky. Let's have just a sort of one maybe down the middle where it's been eaten away a little bit. I'm going to let that spread out. This is either an ASMR experience you'll love, or it's setting your teeth on edge in a really awful way. Apologies, but that's what happens when you've got sand in your texture paste. If you don't have grit paste or texture sand paste, you can absolutely add granules to an existing texture paste. People have been mentioning using spices in their rustiness, cinnamon, paprika, all kinds of things. So yeah, by all means experiment with that, and you'll get a delicious smelling project as well. So lots of great tips in the comments below all these videos if you want to explore further with rusty possibilities. There we go. So that's kind of enough of the texture paste, I feel. And then what I'm going to do is just add a little bit of opaque crackle paste. Decoart also do great texture crackle paint, crackle paste. And I'm letting those combine as they combine. There'll be a little bit where there's crackle and grit. There'll be little bits where there's just grit, little bits where there's just crackle, but just creating that sense of metal peeling away, decaying, just no longer smooth and polished and delicious. There we go. That's ample, really, to be going on with. Might put just a little bit in this central part as well. A little bit of crackle through there. So that's going to give me another one to play with. Now crackle, the texture paste, if you're just using the grit paste, you can absolutely dry that with a heat tool and move on straight away. If you're using crackle paste, you have to let the crackle do its thing. If you heat dry crackle, it won't crackle. It needs the drying time in order to let that happen. That's why in Blue Peter fashion, for any UK children of the 60s, 70s and 80s, Blue Peter fashion, I have one here that I made earlier. For this, I think I'm going to kick off with, I've mentioned these in a previous video, these are the Decoart Media Fluid Acrylics, absolutely great. I was introduced to them by Andy Skinner, a brilliant UK artist who, yeah, is at the root of lots of my rusty playtime. But I've also got equivalents of these in PaperArtsy, Fresco paint form, and you can definitely have a look through your existing stash to find, yeah, similar things. One of the joys of these for me is that they are translucent. I've tried to grab PaperArtsy equivalents that also have a translucence. So Pumpkin Soup is one of their translucent paints. Autumn Fire is one of their translucent paints. They also come in semi-opaque finishes. Okay, you don't get, so there isn't a brown shed in translucent, semi-opaque and opaque. Brown shed is a semi-opaque paint, as opposed to Peacoat, which is an opaque paint. So it's not that PaperArtsy produce all their paints in every finish, but there are lots of PaperArtsy paints which are translucent, so they're quite good for the game. This is of the Decoart's Transparent Yellow Iron Oxide and Quinacridone Gold. I've mentioned before that if I were allowed one paint for rusty ingredients, it would probably be that one. And I'm going to do a bit of each probably. I'm going to do some with these, some with those, and just play. So with these, I'm just going to start by getting a yellowish coat on with the yellow iron oxide. Just let that move through there. And what's also really nice to have around at this point is just a little spritz of water so that you can allow those colours to move. A yellow undertone is quite a good starting place for rust. And yeah, if you want one of those sort of bright orangey kinds of rusts, it's definitely the place to go. I will almost certainly be adding more of a brown, dark brown and or grey tint to these as I go, because I'm not so much for the orangey rusts. I like the brown weathered sort. So this, I'm sort of looking as I do it on here for those places where the crackle is inviting me to add decay. I added it, as you can see, in a very rough coat, deliberately leaving marks in from the palette knife so that I could choose areas when I get here that are rusting away. Just those little sort of dips and divots. If you play sport, you'll know what a divot is in the pitch. Places where the rust is seeping in because the metal has been dented or damaged. So that's really the game here, is to play into the natural erosion, the natural decay that can happen. I might put a bit of PaperArtsy on the... Ooh, see, there's already something exciting about that, isn't there? Going to put some of these PaperArtsy ones onto here as well, so that I've got the ability to mix and match a bit as I go. So this is Pumpkin Soup and Autumn Fire, both translucents. I've got some others around as well. Brown Shed Semi-Opaque, which I think is going to give me a bit more depth to my rust. As I say, I like my rust with a bit of depth. But I think it's going to be quite good on this slate one, the metal one, to have a bit of brightness, which is why I've started with the transparent yellow iron oxide. So I'm going to add in a little bit of that Autumn Fire. That's got quite a nice look to it. Got a water jar nearby so that I can just get a bit more liquid into the paints as I go, or you can give them a little spritz with the water sprayer. So I'm working from the edges for the most part, because that is where things tend to rust from. That's quite good. So that, as you can see, we're working from quite a bright place at the moment, but because I'm me, it will start to dull down as we go. Adding in a bit of the Brown Shed. Yeah, that's more my jam. That's quite close to the Quinacridone Gold actually in tone, I would say, particularly used thickly. That's got quite a nice look to it. Let's maybe add a bit of that in here. And I'm going to give myself a bit of a watery wash of Quinacridone Gold just over some of these areas where I've applied texture paste, but it's not sort of sticking up, as it were. It's just a scraping of texture paste. I might add in a bit of pumpkin soup over those as well. So those are places where the decay is just beginning. So it's telling a story over time, letting those build up. And again, none of this is about saying go and buy this particular ingredient, this ingredient, apply them in this order, and away you go. It's playtime. It's explore time. Oh, I'm enjoying that. Good. Let's add a little bit more messiness to some of these patches. Just a sense of that rust spreading out a little bit. There it is. Good. Little areas where the decay is spreading just into some of these dips again. That's looking quite good. This is looking quite good. Time for a bit more Quinacridone Gold. And you can see I'm again, and I'm a huge advocate of this, it's looking as I'm playing, I'm looking at what's appearing in front of me and then sort of following my instinct / desires about what I would like to increase, what I want to intensify, where I might want to change things up a little bit. And yeah, it is going to be, for me, a gradual question of adding darks for some of this decay, definitely. Coming back in with the Quinacridone Gold. But imperfection is the other, I mean, rust is an imperfection. It's the metal getting eaten away. So trying to do it perfectly would be nonsense, really. That's a bit of pumpkin soup coming in as a layer. That's nice. A little bit there, a little bit there. Right, time to bring some darks into the mix, I think. Going to come in with a couple of bits of brown shed and Quinacridone Gold first of all, and then let me talk to you about some of the colours that are going to come in for the darks. Here, raw umber and Payne's grey, absolutely brilliant. And sort of PaperArtsy equivalents might be your French roast, peacoat, even some of the slate again. Payne's grey is quite a blue grey, so that's why I've pulled out the peacoat. That's going to be quite nice, although that is opaque, so that'll change things up. But with a watery spritz, you can create a more transparent look as you go. Yeah, this is good. What I'm slightly starting to want over this one is a little bit of random spatter just to add to the look. Like come along this edge and along this edge. And in those dips, that's quite nice. And yeah, I've got all this paint on the mat. So let's go in for a spit spat. And again, I'm sort of aiming it to be connected to these areas that are already decaying. That's where I'm allowing that spatter to focus. Definitely want some darks on this one. This one's sort of different because it's got its dark built in a way from the slate background, the metal background, but it's still quite nice to get that variation. Let's put a bit of pumpkin in there. Good. I'm going to leave these on the mat. If they're spritzed with water, they will hold their fluidity for quite a while. PaperArtsy paints do dry fast. That glorious chalky opacity. It's a quick drying paint, but if you give it a spritz of water, it'll hang around in case you want it again. Okay, so for these, let's get a bit of, see, even that's quite good applied direct. A more opaque paint over the dark is going to be good. If you use the translucents over the dark, they're probably not going to hold terribly well. They'll give you nice shadowy effects, but you need something a bit more opaque. So the brown shed is a semi-opaque. It's got a bit more presence over a dark background than a fully transparent paint will have. There we go. So I'm going to put a little dot of each of these on here. That's soaking into my background there. Just grabbing those so it's not getting everywhere. Let's put these to one side. I'm going to stick to these two for today because I've shown you the PaperArtsy alternatives and you can absolutely use those. So that's a little dot of Payne's grey, little dot of raw umber so that I've got those available to play with. And I'm still using, so this is one of my Ikea craft brushes from the kids department. And what's nice about this is you get the flat. They also come with a round, so you can choose to add just little dots. I quite like the flat of this for being able to add edge. So the flat part of this is quite a good way to be able to be specific about where that paint is adding depth, especially if I'm looking for these sort of strips of decay. So again on here, I'm just going to rinse off the brush and then move that around a little bit. If you feel like you've gone too dark, and there is a lot of dark in that, just get in while it's still wet, add a little water, and you can move that paint around quite satisfactorily. Just creating a bit of depth and dark along the edges, through into here. So in some places, as you can see, these darks are going over Quin Gold and yellow iron oxide. In some places they're going just over yellow iron oxide. I'm going to go for another little bit of the raw umber, I think, right in those cracks. And another thing Andy Skinner taught me, and you can absolutely find him doing rusty demos here on YouTube too, is mixing the Payne's grey and some Quin Gold gives you what he calls, and I think might be known in the art world as a dirty wash, which is just a brilliant kind of, yeah, it does what it says on the tin. It creates a wash that just makes something look dirty. So that was a fairly well-timed pause for a parcel delivery. I don't think my paint has dried out, and it gives me a chance to come back and look freshly at what's going on here. I think a bit more dirty wash over this one is definitely what I want, and maybe a bit more Payne's grey and Quinacridone gold added into some of these areas of rustiness. And I say Quinacridone gold, I'm sort of now starting to use the brown shed fairly interchangeably with that for that sense of the darks of the rust. Get a little bit more dirty wash mixed up. I'm gonna want some more of this Quin Gold on the mat, I think. Come on, there you go. It doesn't need much. As you can see, I'm working with dots of paint, and it really does go quite a long way. I hope you can see the gorgeous colour of that dirty wash getting mixed up there. Let's add some autumn fire back into this mix maybe, because with those darks that actually makes quite a lovely rustiness. And now I'm just using the craft mat as a bit of a palette to mix up possibilities, and I can see that quite clearly because I've got the white craft mat. This is a Wow embossing mat. It's basically the same as the Tim Holtz craft mats, but I find the whiter colour quite useful because I very often end up using my craft mat as a palette, and that just gives me the ability to see the colours that are happening before they end up on the project I'm applying them to. That's all working quite nicely. Let's get a bit of dark going on here, and I just want to give myself areas where we're getting that sense of the depth of decay. When you use a watery wash over something like the grit paste and the Crackle, it will sink down into that texture and give you wonderful sort of highlights and lowlights, really making the most of having added that texture in the first place, letting it shine and come to the fore by letting dark paint really trickle down into those gaps. And if you want to intensify some of the shadows, your Payne's grey is also going to be really good at that, just to fool the eye into thinking there's a real depth to some of these decaying patches. It gives you shadow and deep dark hollows in between the rusty eaten away areas. That's all quite enjoyable, I think. Maybe another little dark patch in the center here, maybe, and you can see now I'm mixing PaperArtsy paints and Decoart paints perfectly happily. Mix your mediums, let them play together, see what they'll come up with. that works for the effect you're after. I'm enjoying the dirty wash on those quite a lot. That's getting me quite a nice rusty look. I'm sort of inclined to go around the edge with something quite dark, because again, that's going to fool the eye into accepting this as a piece of metal with decay going around it. The shadows of that give us a bit more dimension, give us a bit more substance. And if that wants to sort of creep on, I think that's good too. Wasn't anticipating that as an effect, but that's what playing is about. So these places where there's little white bits, I sort of like it as a highlight, little flecks where the light is catching. But if you want to get rid of them, by all means, just cover them with one or other of your painty colours. And I'm just letting the paintbrush dance a little bit now to let it create shadows and depth sort of where it wants to. Let's let that dry, see where we're at. I might go over the whole thing with a sort of dirty wash, and I'm sort of thinking along similar lines here, so that is going to need a little bit more Quin Gold onto the mat. That's a huge amount. Really don't need all that. So let's mix that in with some of these darks here, and I'm going to go back into these rusty patches and just intensify the Quin Gold, mixed in with either raw umber or Payne's grey, increasing that depth and darkness. Again, along the edges, I'm really enjoying a proper dark, letting that intensify with the shadows where it's eating away. Come into the center with a bit more of the Quin Gold. Something dark in the middle of this patch. There it is, just down in that crease. Come along with the dark here. And this is just playing now. You could go on adding layers kind of forever. It can become fairly obsessional. But yeah, just have a dig in your stash. See what you can deploy. And playing is really the very best way to find out what works for you. By all means, add in some cinnamon and some, I don't know what else, can't remember what people have mentioned, but yeah, take a look in the comments. There are people offering up their rusty recipes with ingredients from the kitchen cabinets, so don't just think craft room. Spread your net a little wider and see what you've got. And of course, the other thing I'm always doing is keeping an eye out in the street for old rusty washers, anything that I might be able to add into a crafty project. That's now looking really rather good around there, don't you think? I like that. I'm going to add some more darks around here. So get out a rusty palette of possibilities and let them mix and match and move and see what gets you the look that you're after, which might not be the same as the look I'm after. I want that depth and aging really quite intensified. You might want the shiny brilliance of fresh rust. One other thing to sort of bear in mind about possible rustiness, I've mentioned it before, is that glint of gold that sometimes when the light hits rust, you get this extraordinary sort of gleam and glimmer in the sunlight. PaperArtsy have a beautiful gold paint that you can do that with. I'm thinking of doing some backgrounds with that quite soon anyway, so I might keep that for that playtime. But you could also go, and this is experimental. Got a couple, so waxes, metallic waxes, loads and loads produced by Finnabair for Prima. These are some that PaperArtsy used to carry, the Treasure Gold. They can no longer be shipped internationally for, I don't know, various postage reasons. but because I've still got mine, they're the ones I tend to grab out when I'm going. So I've got it on my fingertip. The paint is still wet, so this will be interesting to see what I get. So this is again experimental. Really, I should wait till it dries and then I can apply it over the top of the texture, see what I get. But this is playtime, not perfection time. A little bit more of that. A little bit more of that. I mean, you can see I could just do this for quite a long time and be happy as a way of spending my day. I sort of want to spread those ones out a little bit. Get that dirty wash just spreading into, yeah, that's good. And the dark, deep dark down in that crack, and a bit of deep dark around the edge of here. Sorry, I'm going to head back into that gold thought in a minute. I got sort of distracted by what was happening in front of me. Again, well, I did advertise it as a few minutes of fun, and that's what I'm having. There we go. Okay. So what I might do is give this a little bit of a dry. Oh, I'm just looking at that one through the camera, thinking that's pretty good. I'm going to give this a quick blast of heat gun. That's not good. That bit there doesn't look real to me. Let's just let that spread out a little bit or go on a journey down there. That's better. And then just knock it back a bit. I like it falling into those cracks. Maybe a little bit here. Yeah, that's good. Queen gold is such fun to play with. Sorry, I've gone off camera now, haven't I? There we are, just adding a bit around the edges. Yeah, I'm going to give that a quick blast with the heat gun and then maybe come and put just a sweep of gold onto it. So this is the Florentine treasure gold. So it's quite a rich orangey gold, which I like. It's a very Renaissance look. So I'm just hitting little scraps of that texture with a hit of that gleam. And you can apply it, and then if you give it a sort of little buff with a kitchen towel or a cloth, it'll just really bring that gleam into focus. So let's try and hit those two up there with a little bit of a rub of cloth, and then yeah, you're gonna get that rusty glimmer in light, which is quite a nice effect to have on the go. I don't know if you can see that happening. Let's try a little bit on here. You could, of course, you can apply this with a brush or a sponge of some kind, but I've always been a fan of. You know I have. It's always the sign of a good time. Those inky, painty fingers. So it's quite a long time since I've used this, so the surface is a little bit dry, but as I work it, I'm getting more of it. I'm going to put a little shimmer over there. Can you see that hint of shine going on down in that bottom corner? Yeah, there it is. There it is. So that's quite a fun extra ingredient for, again, accentuating your texture highlights. Another great mixed media ingredient for accentuating texture are distressed crayons, because you can apply those and they'll hit the texture with that sort of flat surface, and you can leave it all knobbly and nasty, or you can kind of spread it out. That's another great thing. We did do a whole video on using the distressed crayons over Crackle and over texture, so I will link to that one. There are metallic distressed crayons, so that's always an option if you want to add that gold look. There are the foundry waxes, but they require a bit more sort of work with heat setting and things. I haven't had a chance to play with foundry waxes yet, but those, again, dig in your stash, see what you've got, and you might be surprised how many rusty possibilities you can create. Thanks so much for your company. As always, I hope you've enjoyed joining me for this bit of rusty playtime. I haven't gone coppery patina on these ones at all, so that's almost tempting me. What have I got here? Got peeled paint. I could use old paper or iced spruce. Those could all give me a nice sort of hint of green to just, yeah, ooh. as you can see, endless possibilities to just, yeah, create turning of the year, rusty, messy, grungy backgrounds. And yeah, we'll find out where these are going to go. Do give me a thumbs up if you've enjoyed the session today. Go below. I'm sorry, I'm distracted by what's happening on the craft mat in front of me. Give me a thumbs up if you've enjoyed what you've seen on the channel today. If you're already subscribed, that's joyous. If you aren't, then I would love to have your company on this creative journey. I will, as always, leave a list of ingredients we've used today in the description down below, as well as those links I've been talking about throughout. Thank you so much for your company, and happy crafting all.